Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram Language Design Review, covering a few different topics. First, we have Failsafe. Is Christopher here?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Right. So, I'm a little bit surprised by pieces of the implementation, and the implementation isn't in the build yet, but it's in an initialization cell if you want to play with it. Um, and so, my first sort of question is, do we want the one arg and two arg forms to be so different? And, is
Okay, represents a form of when passed to failure. Why is it so different?
It's different because of the varargs use case, which we talked about a while ago. I can show the notebook that we have from that, but basically it's different because in general you can pass it if you passed more than one argument to the failsafe, like to the failsafed function,
I see.
then all those arguments get passed to all three functions that you can give failsafe. So the test as well. So actually that test, the not at star missing q, is in some ways a little malformed if you were to pass multiple arguments into it, unless missing q has some varargs form I'm not aware of. So the reason it does that is the reason it's different is because the default third argument, the g, right now the default value if you don't specify a test, the default value basically finds the first argument that fails the default test and propagates that. On the logic, that's a safe thing to propagate because failsafe can detect it's a failure. If you put an arbitrary test though, then we don't really know what to return. We don't even know which argument was like the culprit argument, so we can't just propagate it. So it returns a failure object.
Okay, hold on. Let me think about this for a second. So the point of G is to make it 0 or something if it was a failure. Is that the idea?
I'm not sure you mean by make it 0.
Well,
Right.
make the effective argument. In other words, if I
so what
failsafe,
G specifies what to return if there's a failure. So basically, if test succeeds, it applies F. If test fails, it applies G.
what's the default test? Is it automatic?
Actually, I don't think so, but it should be.
Okay.
Right now, I don't think there's an easy way to get the default test.
Okay, I don't understand that.
Try doing a positive number.
Right.
Oh,
yeah. So that's the
tests are
second
considered a failure. As it says, are considered a failure.
Right, because you want to be able to pass things like. Oh,
now I'm totally confused.
Wait. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I think it's the wrong way around. Look, if
well, yeah.
Hash less than 0.
Yeah, that's actually the second point on the agenda. If you scroll down, what is the sense of the test?
I don't understand. The test. Okay.
Right. So yeah. Right. So basically, things that give true are considered okay and fed to F, and things that give false are considered errors and given to G. That's the current implementation, which isn't to say we have to stick it, but I did bring that up as an actual discussion point because I was confused by this at first as well. It's certainly not what you get from reading that definition box.
Right. The usage line I think is not that was not a serious usage line, I would say.
Okay, but which way around should it be?
Yeah.
Okay, so wait a minute. Let's imagine. So the issue is if this is varargs, how do we test?
Well,
we're testing multiple arguments for failure.
I think that's an orthogonal, excuse me, that's an orthogonal question. But all the arguments are var args.
Right. And you have actually, if you look at the next two examples that I have there, you see that it's sort of var args in a somewhat confusing fashion.
Okay, but I mean, this is presumably correct, because this is nice. If you want to test the first argument, it's #1. You want to test all of them, it's ##. That's
yes.
all good.
Yes.
And I mean, I think that third argument is doing the right thing as well. Now, what the sense of the second argument should be.
Right.
Pulling up your examples.
This is the notebook I think that we looked at a long time ago. It's maybe slightly modified, but it has some examples of like the var arg case and stuff like that. Right. So there's a classic example in the var arg one about halfway down, which is when you want to call divide, but you only want to do it when the second argument isn't 0.
I must say, I think that having that be a test for failure is better than having it be a test for okayness.
So if it was a test for failure, it would say
#2 == 0.
Sure.
Equals 0. Yeah. I mean, well, okay, here's an argument. I'm not totally sure what direction it should be, but here's an argument for it being a test of okayness, which is that it's often safer to have people, it's often safer to have people thinking about what does my F expect versus how do I avoid this one failure case I'm thinking about, right? It's better to write that, oh, my input must be a number than to write, oh, my input cannot be a string.
Yes, that's a fair point.
And I guess and another question which is slightly independent but also related is, if the test returns not a Boolean, which way does that go?
Yes, that's a good question too.
I think not a Boolean should be considered a failure, no matter what the direction of the test is. Because if it doesn't return I think if it doesn't return a Boolean, that suggests that F is really not going to work because the test didn't even work.
That's a good
okay.
argument.
But that's another argument for that second argument being a test of success.
You mean because then you can use true Q?
Yeah, but I mean, but also, if it's a test of success and things just go astray, if it's a test of success,
Right.
You have to hit the nail right on the head to get it to go through.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the other question about var args? I mean, this is looking with that. I mean, just the description of that second thing. Is
which arguments are valid, right? We just need to rephrase it.
Yeah.
Test whether the arguments are considered valid. I mean, test whether the arguments applies test to the arguments.
Here's actually a question, because I remember when I was throwing this together. So it would be really nice if for operator forms or for things like test applied, which only live as operator forms, if the usage line, you could write, the bracket args or something like that. Like you could write or bracket, arg1, arg2.
I think
you get what I mean?
That. Yeah.
Because I looked at examples. Nowhere do we do it.
I think we should do it. I think we should.
Otherwise, there's all this dancing around talking about the arguments and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think we should just do that. I thought we did do that in some places.
I couldn't find any.
Okay, well, that's a question for Brian. I think he would know. I think we should do it for these pure operator forms. Because what does it mean it's argument unchanged? I mean, you've got this thing where there's one missing three, for example. What happens if I do this? If I say, uh,
Yeah, if there's a dollar failed and then a missing, it does the first one, I believe. So that's the default G.
is first failure.
Is first failure, but the first failure as the default, because it can only do that for the default test, right? Because that requires knowledge of the internals of how the test works.
Yes.
Like think about in the, hash 2 does not equal 0 case with divide. What on earth, what do you return?
Let's just review again where this is used. So the typical case is don't run this function if it's being fed garbage, right? That's the most common.
Yeah, or like I've got some code and some of my data is missing. I want you just to skip the missings.
Well, how do you do that here?
Well,
you just do failsafe of F.
Right. So he's talking about the case where you're like mapping across, right?
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yeah. So I mean, I see. Yeah, that's a really good case.
Right. So that's the one argument case. But both in
by the
terms
way, is a reason to not have the documentation have args right there, because you're not actually putting the args in here. That's pretty nice. I mean, that should be like the first example, because it's obvious why you'd want that. All right, so we'd say something like failsafe of F
right. I mean, what I don't know that this is what we actually want to write, but right, the correct statement is that it represents an operator form of F that returns the first failed argument when past the failure.
Yes, I think that is the most correct way. Although actually, it is the most correct for the single argument form, but then for the 2 and 3 argument forms, you have to then re-explain. It no longer has that behavior. So
right, which is how we got into this discussion in the first place.
Yes, right. I mean, I don't really know what else it could do though, other than as long as the second and third arguments are var args.
Right.
It's not arg though. It's arg 1, arg 2, arg 3.
something like that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we could say
Failsafe is an interesting alternative name.
let's say wait a minute, fail safe. Now what does it do? Computes. Oops.
Well, you need to add the test. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Test. Evaluates test of X. Is it test of
Yeah.
all the XI?
Yes.
All the XIs. Yeah.
To determine whether
You could say this. You could say runs f of x1, x2 so long as test of such and such returns true.
okay.
But it doesn't really specify what it does when it doesn't return true.
Returns f of x if returns true.
And then you could say like returning a failure object otherwise or something.
Right. And the failure
Or otherwise returning a failure.
And a failure. Okay. And then we've got
It's a failure like uppercase failure though.
right. So failure object. I think.
okay.
Yeah.
I would just say
think it could
failure
be
dot otherwise.
Yeah.
What do you mean dot? Or
Yes. Like that.
oh, like that. Yeah.
For some reason, failsafe is a really hard word to type. I don't know why. Okay, so this one,
It's the same as the previous one, only it returns G of XI in the failure case.
Right.
oops, failf. I'm kind of thinking it should be called FF or something here.
FF is a little F to FF. I feel like is a little weird.
Yeah.
All right, okay. Do you think failf is better?
Better, yeah.
Does not give true.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, are we happy then with this functionality? Seems good otherwise. Is there any case which we have to deal with here?
No,
I don't know if Itai has anything else. There's one thing that I think Roman was asking about, but I think we somewhat resolved this on the. I don't know. I think we might have talked about this before. The thing about options, whether it should handle options. I think we decided basically no.
What do you mean by handle options?
So I think this is kind of impossible. The question is, suppose instead of F you wrote plot. Now if I say failsafe of plot, of some arguments and then some options, should the test function apply to the options as well? And I think the argument was maybe it could automatically figure out where the options are and not apply test to them. But I think that just is like totally impossible.
I think it's really hard. Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice, I think, but
I'm not even sure it would be nice, because I think you might, if you had, like, if you actually were using failsafe on a function that can take options, I think the test would want to be able to see the options too.
Or it might, right, it depends.
It depends, but then in general, it should give the options and you can strip them out yourself if you want to strip them
Right.
out.
I just want to have one last iteration on the name.
Oh, this is such a good name. We spent so long thinking of names. This is a good name.
Okay, fine. It's safe under failure is basically the point.
Right.
Sure.
What did it mean in the Cold War? The term, like what did it mean in that case where, like, have your submarines or bombers or something that meant if there's a failure, that meant a different thing, right? That meant
I think it means if there's a failure, you can recover from it. Like there's a last thing you can do to save yourself from the failure.
Well, I think what it meant in the Cold War was, right, that, even if they, take out your other ways of destroying the world, you still have at least one way to destroy the world.
It's funny that the word safe was in there.
Yes.
Okay, but let me understand. Normally, failsafe means things like, the bolt retracts if the power goes off. Is that true? Things like that.
I think so.
Yeah.
So is that the same meaning as what we have here?
Yeah, I mean, it says if something goes wrong, you're not gonna apply the function.
Fine. That's reasonable enough.
You're gonna jam the machinery if something goes wrong.
Right. Retract the bolt if the power goes out. All right. I guess I'm convinced. All right. Anything else to discuss on this?
Only one question. Any relation with missing fallback?
Missing fallback? What's that?
That's something that we designed for tabular. It's in the prototype. It's a function that takes the first argument. If it's missing, it goes to the second argument. If it's missing, it goes to the next one.
Oh, yes. I remember discussing this now in our very long tabular meetings.
What do you mean it goes to the first?
So it's like you give it 5 arguments and it picks the first one that isn't missing. Is that right?
Basically.
Exactly. It's a function that can be inserted in the operations of construct columns, etc. And if it finds a missing input, it gives you the opportunity to decide what to do with it.
I see. So you'd say missing fallback of, hash age, comma,
I see what you're saying.
2.
Yeah, right.
So if the age is not known, it replaces with 2.
Right. And of course, if you had some other column which might be meaningful, right? So if
Right.
Exactly.
Hash age, comma, hash approximate age, comma, 2 or something. What about does it have any way of specifying what to consider missing?
No, it's a fully missing dedicated function.
I see. Okay. So like in divide by 0 situations, you'd probably use like replace or something. Like if I wanted to say turn zeros into ones, that's probably a bad behavior to have, but
does it look like this? I mean,
well, I assume that ampersand's on the outside.
It doesn't take functions. It takes the names of the hash column 1, hash column 2.
And then the ampersand is on the outside if you're using it in the tabular.
Exactly.
So the problem for failsafe is it doesn't know. It's just being given one thing. But its fallback is essentially failaf.
Yes. I was looking at check, which is a similar spirit, and it's also documented expert fail expert, which is very nice with F fail F.
Yeah. Okay, missing fallback. By the way, it's not a bad name. Missing fallback is not a bad name.
Although one question would be, are there any other things we can imagine it falling back on in the future, like dollar failed and stuff like that?
I think the idea in Tabula was that other cases would be first converted into missings by the input mechanism, and you would have missing of various types. And then once you are in that situation, you have everything converted into missings, you manipulate the missings.
Okay.
Because the fact is, this is getting applied to a thing. There's no point in applying this to anything unless you are being given, what is it? The whole row, basically, right? The whole association-like row.
Exactly. But the functions that construct columns, etc., get are functions of rows. And so they have the opportunity to manipulate the whole row. And decide that.
But this particular thing is, this would be one could imagine using this for, I could imagine using this as a thing like lookup.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is a construction that will exist outside Tabula. It was created for Tabula, but
right.
It's independent.
Which might mean that you would want some kind of criterion option or something here, like a same test, but not a same test, to determine what you should. Because I can imagine using it outside of Tabula, that the test for failure. Let me think. One could imagine just a thing called fallback.
I see.
I think it's nice that it's varargs. It looks nice. But if we want to make a more flexible function, I think it probably kind of has to take a list in the first argument or something like that.
Yeah.
Just because otherwise we're going to have weird options and yeah.
Yep.
Ethan on our live stream is commenting, when you're mapping, you might want to fall back to one of the arguments of the list or elements of an association. Yeah, but we can't do that when it's mapping. It's just seeing the local thing until we have supplied. Let one see more things. So here, this is really, well, you're saying that you think that it has to be something like this, where, and then we have criterion which defaults to missing Q. Something like that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say that's what has been proposed, but I don't know which consequences this would have in Tabula.
Let's investigate.
Yeah.
I think we should suggest this. We should bring this up in the next Tabula meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Carla, make a note of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The varargs is pretty though. I don't know. It's and most of the time that's what you want.
I mean, we could introduce missing fallback, and then maybe in the future we introduce fallback as a more general thing. It's a little confusing. Let's explore this. Let's see the use cases for tabular for missing fallback and see how it's used with other things.
Okay.
And for example, yeah. All right. Should we move on?
Yep.
Equal bracket styling.
Right. So there are a couple of issues here. The first is the coloring of the brackets. So, basically what we've done up till now is, operators are always black. And right, you look at the string, even though the string is gray, the operators are black.
I get it.
That's an
By the way,
argument.
I think this should be more of a ligature. I think the equal sign should get a lot closer to the bracket here.
Maybe not, but that's although I actually don't necessarily disagree on that point. But right, there's sort of a counter argument to the coloring them black, which is for comments. We do color the delimiters comment colored, so maybe that's an argument.
I strongly think these delimiters should be colored. I don't think these delimiters should look like they're part of the usual flow of the syntax.
But they are part of the usual flow of the syntax.
I know,
right?
but they're only...
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point.
That is exactly the point. It's input form. You could type this into a raw terminal.
Yeah.
So they,
I mean, I'm more objecting to the brown of the type inside it.
That's point number 2. But I think... Right. I think let's settle the delimiters before we get there. So one argument is that the delimiters should be black. The other argument is we should change the double quotes to be gray, just like comment delimiters are comment colored, and make, the equal brackets the same color.
That would be what I would favor. I think the quotes are like saying it's a quote isn't really what we're trying to go for.
Right.
Yeah, and we've talked about doing that in user assistance. It just, independently of any discussion with Itai, it's just not something that we've done yet.
Okay.
Because it should be said, virtually every programming editor out there colors the quotes the same as the contents.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I propose that we move the equals close to the bracket, that we keep the grayness of the brackets, and that we change the color of the I'm sorry, Dave.
To be the gray of the brackets?
No. Well, maybe. I mean, that might not be totally stupid. Do we have anybody from design here?
Well, the gray of the brackets is pretty close to the gray of strings. I would have thought we might want to distinguish strings from equal brackets.
But it's rather a stringy thing. I mean,
right.
It is.
So my argument...
It is stringy, but it's not a string.
I agree.
Right. Although I will point out that message tags, which are auto-stringified, are colored, I believe, in the same... They're certainly gray, and I believe it's the same gray as strings. And so, to my point of view, that's an argument.
Sorry, what is gray? Sorry, I missed what you said.
Message tags. So if you do foo : bar in one of themselves that's really big, you will see that the bar is... You're missing a colon.
2 colons.
Yes,
right?
it's gray.
Can you do a string right next to it just so we can...
I think it is intentionally the same color.
It is a string-like thing. I mean, what would happen?
Exactly. I mean that's why this is colored to begin with, because it was supposed to be a string.
I think that's much more reasonable. I hate the brown.
According to Noah, you are the one who picked that brown, but all of us who have looked at it have been very confused by it. So,
well, I think it's just wrong. I mean, I made a mistake.
Okay.
Assuming I picked it, I made a mistake.
Yep. Yep, we'll fix it then.
Okay.
I think probably gray is the right color. I don't think that introducing another color is terribly useful.
Okay,
So the
then we'll just use the string color for everything.
Yeah,
Right.
anybody want to suggest something else? I just don't think any color that is on the reddish spectrum is going to look like an error.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask, should the colon for message tags be gray as well?
I
feel like
think
no.
I think
Yeah.
no, right? Because it's not part of the string, right? The colon is the head, which is a symbol. It's
By that logic, the quotes
Are
shouldn't
we
be
are we
gray
able,
either.
John? Are we able to fix this in 0-day Packlet as this
Yes.
color?
Yes.
Okay. So then we also should make sure that the blog gets appropriately fixed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I didn't have that at the top of my mind, but yes, that's a good point.
Okay. Let's keep going.
okay. So Lou unfortunately is out today, but we still think we can have the discussion, which is, part of the idea of introducing notebook cell data was that it would,
Cell
know.
menu is that we could just get rid of this menu item. So
I think we can just get rid of it, or maybe for a version or two we can have something that basically says, go to the notebook, go to notebook cell data.
well, I mean, it's not go to notebook cell data, it's write a little program with notebook cell data.
Well, do we want to do that? I mean,
What does that menu item even do? I've never seen it before.
it's been there for years.
Yes.
My God.
Yeah.
So this GUI would die if
Yes,
Yeah.
this GUI would die.
Yeah, but the GUI's always been a bit problematic anyway. And
Yeah, the
Don't
fraction of the
say.
time that it actually works is, not as high as you would like.
So does notebook cell data also cover the stuff that's in the second section of this dialogue?
yes.
Okay.
Some of that stuff might not be in the zero argument form, but there are ways to get to all of it.
Because that's the part I use most frequently.
I never trust opening this menu item because I think it's going to crash things.
What is
What? Why would it crash
honestly,
things?
Because it often goes pink and gets very
Well,
red.
yeah, I mean, it's not crashy, but it is pinky.
Okay,
that's for
I
sure.
always worry when I see pinking, I worry about crashing. But you're telling me it will only pink and it will not crash. I didn't know that.
I've never seen any crashing reports on this.
Okay.
So.
what is really
mean-
the value? I mean, I don't even know what the value of all this notebook history stuff is. Like, is it used by
it's
anything?
kind of convenient for provenance of things. It's kind of interesting to know, I've used it with some frequency to know when did I edit this notebook and make this change? Was it a year ago, 5 years ago, whatever? Like where the hell?
I mean, it feels like very, very poor man's Git. Like
It is.
Yes,
Yes, it
yes.
is.
A lot of us who use Git just turn this off and then rely on Git blame to give us that information.
And it is
Yeah.
certainly the case, by the way, that Git lens type functionality is in the roadmap. It's not sadly right around the corner, but it is on the roadmap.
Okay, look, in 14.1, this menu item is here anyway, so we're not removing it from that.
Yeah, no, we're not changing. This is basically a question for 14.2.
Let's let notebook cell data cook for a month or so, and then let's readdress this.
Okay.
And I mean, I think the options are, to replicate this with notebook cell data or to dump this. Ethan on our live stream makes a request. Could you make it easier to input key map shortcuts? Isn't that changing menu setup? Where are the keyboard shortcuts? They're in menu setup.tr, aren't they?
That's not the only
Depends.
place. That is one of the places. And yeah, that's a frequent request. But you know, that's with and nothing that we're opposed to. It's just a matter of priorities.
And let me just offer the example of Firefox that promised 20 years ago that they would allow customizable shortcuts. And I think at some point they just decided, well, actually, we're not going to do that. And they certainly haven't delivered it to this day. So user customizable shortcuts are not super easy to do.
I also don't think
it's
a great
amusingly, Ethan's remark is small request, and just to emphasize, the request is small, but the feature is not.
Yeah, but also it's like one of these things about, you know, let's allow people to modify the syntax, which is like the syntax is quite complicated and you can't just modify pieces of it. And it's just like we just had this issue with command quote, which got co-opted by someone in some development version, and then people are upset. Where is it?
Yeah, it was Itai actually who discovered that. So yeah.
Yes.
Well, I noticed it being said that it had been co-opted. I just didn't know. Yeah. I mean, I think that the challenge is, you know, where are the free keyboard shortcuts that you're going to use? And if you know, grab one.
And that's, you know, one of the complexities of implementing this feature properly is being able to do things like, you know, help you understand what it is you're stomping on when you make a given assignment.
Yes. I mean, I'm just remembering.
And there are good systems out there. I mean, you know, I like, you know, Visual Studio has a good system, and I sort of imagine, you know, in the Microsoft sort of way, that there, you know, is one individual somewhere whose just full-time job is doing nothing more than keyboard customization. You know, that person does it day in, day out, you know, 52 weeks a year, you know.
Defining a single keyboard or
no, a keyboard shortcut manager for the whole system.
I see.
And the one in Visual Studio is, you know, it's got a lot of functionality. It's also very complex.
Well,
you
I'm
know,
still remembering
they deal with things like, you know, grouping you know, functionality by context, so that you can assign the same keyboard shortcut to be two different things in two different contexts, for example.
Right. Well, I was put off user definable syntax by an experience in 1981, which you probably all heard about, the famous SMP SX set syntax set function that allowed you to redefine syntax so that you could, the great use case was AUB, you could redefine to be union. Okay. The problem was when you redefined things so that functions that included things like quit were redefined away, and the parser basically wouldn't ever let you get to them. And people, you know, would report this as a bug all the time because people didn't foresee the consequences of various kinds of, you know, resetting that they did.
Yeah.
That put me off syntax resetting for a long time. I guess it's 45 years now, give or take. Okay. Rethinking on.
Yes. So on bracket is documented to turn on trace for every symbol, which, you know, used to make sense, but really doesn't make sense anymore. And so I have here in gray a comment from a pull request where we're trying to make it less bad. And, you know, if you just do plot of X between 0 and 1 in a standalone kernel with on turned on, you get 70,000 lines of output with comprising 2.6. And I do not recommend evaluating this in the front end because
oh no.
Yeah.
even just on before it's done. It's already.
Well, particularly after my comments about SMP and how one should. Oh no! Help!
Quit the kernel.
Yeah.
Evaluation.
Wait, no,
Quit
it's still.
kernel.
I can't get to it. I can't
Oh.
get to it.
Yeah. You,
But
Uh,
it's finished
you-
anyway, right?
If
It's just.
if you want to keep the front
No,
end
it's frozen.
session, you could bring up the activity monitor and quit the kernel from there. Otherwise, maybe just force quit and start again.
Okay.
Wait,
This
it's
is
like
good.
some of these are ridiculous. Like not is printing every time it runs.
well, you've turned on trace for every single symbol, so
Oh, it turns on. Oh, I see. It doesn't just turn on all the messages. It turns on. Oh, geez. Okay. Yeah, that is a little bit.
This is crazy. This is clearly crazy. But what the heck is it doing here? What is this? I mean, maybe we should have maybe
that
QA
might
should look at some of these things because this looks completely crazy. What is all this stuff?
maybe that's the predictive interface.
But you have it turned off.
Or the code that computes messages.
But what the heck is it doing with this
Why is it
statistics
doing
survival model
survival
fit
model?
dump? Okay, let me just let me get to the activity monitor.
I think the kernel is done though, right? It doesn't say it's running anymore, does it?
Oh, I think it doesn't know whether it's running. It's still it's still.
I think if you just delete the
Yeah,
brackets.
yeah, the
I want to see.
well,
Oh, no, the
you
scroll
may-
bar is
you-
moving.
well, the problem is that the shift enter evaluation has finished, but there are probably asynchronous computations dumping these things.
Okay, what do I kill here? I'm looking at
well,
But
you probably want to
PID.
look for instances of Wolfram.
Yeah,
Wolfram kernel.
Wolfram, or sorry, Wolfram kernel.
I actually have a better idea. This is complicated to do because I've got multiple kernels running and so on. Why don't we see if we can use the technology to do this?
Yeah, no, you want Wolfram kernel camel cased.
Okay, the parent process ID was something I believe. I'm just trying to not kill my other stuff.
Wait, the activity monitor not show Wolfram kernel?
Right. Well, there are only two kernels there that have been running for an hour and a half, so it has to be one of those. And you can safely kill both of them because one of them is your kernel and the other is the helper kernel that the front end uses and which it will restart automatically if you kill it.
Wait a minute. Which one am I killing? I'm killing these ones on July 17th.
Correct. Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that'll work. Yeah, I think kill process only kills processes which have been started by the kernel using, launch process and whatnot.
Yeah, let's go to the activity monitor 32849. Can we sort
This
by
is a great
PID? What?
Yeah.
I was just saying, I mean, this is like fork bomb or something.
Yeah, right.
32849. There it is. Kill it. I probably have to do a full.
I assume something like this also wouldn't be like a security vulnerability. Like if you could, if you had some sort of sandboxed kernel, but then the person can run on open close, does that, I'm not sure it breaks out of a sandbox, but it might break things.
Yes. Okay, let's see if we can get to this now. Oh, God. Okay, we're here. Okay. I think QA should take a look at these because I think there's a lot of stuff here that's just frigging crazy. What the heck is this?
Wavelets,
Wavelets?
lifting filter.
There's no stack trace there.
Well, you kill the kernel. The stack trace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is all this junk? I think it's establishing that things are not this, that, and the other. Okay.
Well, at least some of that stuff is coming from percent reference. I see the elisions context, but yeah, I'm not sure what all of this is. Right? It's some it's some dynamic evaluation of predictive interface or FE kernel communication, elisions.
Okay. The case is clearly made that on open close should be disabled.
Okay.
It should take more than 4 keystrokes to completely torch everything.
But so in a command line, does it also torch things, or is it really just the front end?
It's much more usable, but like I said, if you do that plot, that simple plot, you get 70,000 lines of output, and 2.6 comprising 2.6 megabyte of data. So it's not like it.
Well, here's a naive question. If I run like cloud evaluative on open close, do those messages go somewhere? Actually, maybe cloud evaluate the wrong. If I had an API function that I call from the web, and in the source of it, it says on open close, is there some log file or something that's building up hundreds of megabytes of messages?
I don't think so, but I could be wrong. I can elaborate, but I'm not sure that this is the forum in which to elaborate.
Node is saying that he's used on for debugging things, and he doesn't think it should be disabled. Perhaps it should be an internal context of some kind.
Well, obviously we can't disable on in general. It's the zero argument form. And we could, we could check, right? So one of my proposals there is, well, maybe we restrict it to things in the current context.
Before you hit Shift Enter there, let me give you the incantation that I just tried. And this was in WAS, and it didn't work. And I should have used with cleanup, but I wasn't sure that the kernel predated with cleanup.
I'm not going to do it.
Okay. Okay. I'll throw it here for you anyway, just in case.
Okay. Well, I mean, we could disable it.
Right. So one possibility is to just eliminate the zero argument form. Another possibility is to restrict it. And, we could restrict it to global. We could restrict it to the current context. We could restrict it to...
I think it seems like our node needs to be consulted. He seems to have opinions about it. Let's get this discussion with him. I mean, he's asking for more debugging capabilities. And I think disabling it, I mean, clearly all this stuff that is front-endery just needs to go in on. Whatever on is doing, it should absolutely not report itself for the front end.
Well, I mean, but, right, and an evaluation is an evaluation, right? I mean...
Well, but this is reporting a lot of subsidiary stuff that isn't the core evaluation. All this stuff looks like it's predictive interface or some other, preparatory stuff. It looks like on was effectively switched on even as it's passing through front end stuff.
Right, because when the symbol evaluates, it evaluates, right? It's not like the front, right? I mean, there's a different entry point for the evaluation, but it's not as if, front end, request to evaluate when the front end sends.
I understand. I mean, the statement would be, what does on mean?
One could imagine disabling on, maybe by default in cases where like dollar synchronous evaluation is true and dollar dynamic evaluation is true. That wouldn't seal up all the front end cases, but it would seal up most of them.
Right.
And that would, I mean, the thing is, when it's inside the kernel, it's okay to have on be running. Really inside the kernel, like it's doing.
Well, like I said, in a standalone kernel, plot did 70,000 lines of output and took.
Yeah, I know. Which our node is claiming is useful.
Where is he claiming this?
On Rocket Chat, our nodes, yeah.
But okay, well, it's
let's get our node into this discussion, and let's also consider other telemetry stuff. Okay, and maybe there's a mechanism for this telemetry that makes more sense. I don't understand whether on, whether there's a version of on, maybe with a string argument, that can switch on, useful things, and the pure on everything becomes something different.
Right. Well, yes. I mean, right. Right. I believe on takes patterns. So even if we, did, change to the on bracket, we could still, right. We could, if our node really wants to shoot himself in the foot, he can do, on of star backtick star. I'd have to double check that, but right. The zero, like I said, the documented zero argument form should not be this thing. And this is, I mean, unless you're prepared to go for at least another 20 minutes, this is not something we can get into today. So we'll have to punt that for next time.
I just want to know roughly what we're talking about here. I mean, this is a complaint I've made, I think.
Yes. And we just think you're wrong.
No, I mean, it's not
it's
that
a bit
absolute.
more nuanced than that, but
when are we going to have those charts that are, what are they called? I don't know even what they're
The
called.
Sankey diagrams?
Yes.
Not 14.2.
But we have them as a WFR, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
There's some form of them in WFRs.
And what's happened to the color picking thing? Color, the thing that was going to be the color palette repository?
Nothing too recently.
We really need to get that done. We had a path. We really need to get it done.
We did not have a path. Every time we kept presenting things, and then we'd present A and be like, no, let's do B, and then we do B, and then let's do C, then we do C, and let's do A.
Let's get another meeting about that, please.
Okay. And the cycle begins again.
No, I don't think it's a cycle. I mean, we had a direction which we realized wasn't a good direction. So let's pick that up again rather than letting it die, which we don't want to do. Okay, so I'm trying to understand why. I mean, tree form has a plot style.
Let's not get into this, Stephen.
All right, okay.
It's a big discussion. I spent at least an hour preparing this agenda item, so let's save this for next.
Okay, fair enough. But let's also make sure that color picking thing gets picked up, please.
Color picking. Brett, do you know what that means? Because I don't.
Yes, it's not so much a kernel thing. It's
okay.
I mean, there's probably kernel aspects to it, but yeah.
Which we certainly could do as part of a design review. All right.
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough. Anything else?
Nope.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks to folks on the live stream. See y'all soon.